Planning for retirement can feel like trying to use a paper map for a road trip that's going to last 30 years. You just pick a route and hope for the best, right? But what if that map could update itself in real time? Well, today we're diving into some really cool research that suggests we can build a financial GPS for retirement, one that's designed to navigate all the unexpected twists and turns.
And this, right here, this is the challenge. Just look at the wild, unpredictable swings of the stock market year after year. Any plan you make has to be tough enough to survive all of this for decades. A simple set it and forget it strategy, it just wasn't built for this kind of chaos.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about the old way of doing things, the retirement tightrope. Then we'll introduce this new idea, your retirement GPS. After that, we'll look at the specific tax-saving tools that make it so powerful, see how it actually performs in a simulation, and wrap up with the big idea, the adaptive advantage.
For a long time, retirement planning has felt like a tightrope walk. You get to 65, you make a bunch of educated guesses about the market, about inflation, even about how long you're going to live. And then you just hope for the best. But let's be honest, life is never quite that predictable.
This analogy is just perfect. Imagine you're driving from New York to LA with an old-school paper map. It shows you one single route, but what happens when there's a massive traffic jam in Chicago, or a surprise blizzard shuts down a mountain pass in Colorado? That paper map is useless. It can't adapt to reality.
So, what's the alternative? This is where things get really interesting. The research we're looking at borrows a brilliant concept from control engineering. It asks, what if, instead of that static paper map, we used a live, constantly updating GPS for our retirement?
Okay, the technical name is Model Predictive Control, or MPC, but don't let the jargon scare you off. The idea is actually super intuitive. It's just a system that, every single year, takes a fresh look at everything and creates a brand new, perfectly optimized plan based on your new reality.
And here's how that works. It's a simple three-step loop that just repeats every year. First, you update your info. What are your accounts worth today? Has your life expectancy data changed? Second, you plan. The system crunches all the new numbers and spits out a new optimal path. And third, and this is key, you act, but only on the first year of that new plan, because next year, you're going to do the whole thing all over again.
So this is the fundamental difference. The old way is the fixed map. You're stuck on one road no matter what. The new way is a live GPS. Your portfolio took a big hit last year. The GPS recalculates a new route. You're healthier and might live longer than you thought. The GPS adjusts. It's designed for the real world.
Now, any good GPS needs to have different routes it can suggest, right? Detours, side streets, highways. In the world of finance, those different routes are different types of accounts. And this MPC model is especially good at using one very powerful tool, proactive tax management, mostly using Roth accounts. Let's dig into that.
It really all comes down to one simple question. When do you want to pay your taxes? With traditional pre-tax accounts, you get a tax break on the money you put in today, but you have to pay income tax on every penny you take out in retirement. Roth is the exact opposite. You pay the taxes up front before the money goes in, and then it gets to grow and be withdrawn completely 100% tax-free.
And that tax-free status in retirement? It's like a financial superpower. It means your withdrawals don't bump up your taxable income, which can be a huge deal. Plus, with a Roth IRA, there are no required minimum distributions, or RMDs. The government can't force you to start taking the money out, so it can just keep growing tax-free.
Okay, so this is a super common problem. The government has these income limits, and if you make too much money, you're not allowed to contribute to a Roth IRA directly. So does that mean this amazing tool is just off limits if you're a high earner? Well, not exactly.
And that's where the backdoor Roth IRA comes in. It's a pretty straightforward two-step move. First, you contribute to a traditional IRA. Anyone can do that no matter your income. You just don't take a tax deduction for it. Then, step two, you immediately convert that money into a Roth IRA. Boom. You've just funded a Roth account, totally legally, even if your income is too high.
But, and this is a big but, there is a catch. This backdoor strategy works cleanly only if you don't have other money already sitting in traditional pre-tax IRAs. If you do, you run smack into something called the pro rata rule.
So the pro rata rule is a little tricky. Basically, the IRS says, hey, we see all of your traditional IRAs as one big bucket of money. So when you try to convert just that new after-tax money, the IRS makes you average it out with all of your old pre-tax money. The bottom line is, your conversion ends up being partially taxable, which can really complicate things. It's an absolutely critical detail to know about.
All right, so we've got this adaptive GPS model, and we have these powerful Roth accounts. But the big question is, does this thing actually work? Well, the researchers put it to the test. They ran it through thousands of simulations of different market outcomes to see what would really happen.
And here is the headline result. On average, the adaptive MPC policy ended up with a bequest, that's the money left over for heirs, that was 6% larger than a more standard strategy. And here's the kicker. It did this without the retiree having to spend a single dollar less during their lifetime.
I mean, a 6% larger inheritance without any sacrifice to your lifestyle? That's a pretty big deal. So how in the world does the model pull that off? Well, it all comes down to playing the long game with taxes.
Okay, here's the genius of the strategy. In the early years of retirement, say from 65 to 70, before Social Security really kicks in, most people are in a lower tax bracket. The MPC model sees this as a golden opportunity. It aggressively converts money from the traditional IRA over to a Roth IRA, basically choosing to pay the taxes now while the tax rates are low.
And here's the payoff. Later in retirement, once those required minimum distributions would normally start forcing you to take big taxable withdrawals and push you into a higher tax bracket, the MPC strategy just sails through. Because so much of the money is now sitting in that tax-free Roth account, the annual tax bill is way, way lower. It's the classic case of paying a little more tax now to save a whole lot more later.
So let's just zoom out for a second and think about the big picture here. The real breakthrough isn't some secret formula or a new magic number. It's a totally different philosophy. It's about shifting from a fixed, static plan to a dynamic, adaptive one. It's about planning for reality, not for a perfect world scenario.
And this quote, straight from the research paper, just says it all. The strategy gives you a better chance at leaving more money behind, while at the same time protecting your own standard of living. You get a better outcome simply by being smarter and more responsive year after year.
So at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway for you? It's not about running this exact complex algorithm. It's about embracing the core principles. First, adapt. Look at your plan and make adjustments every single year. Second, be proactive about your taxes. They're not just a fixed cost, they're something you can manage. And third, make sure you're using the right tools, like Roth accounts, to give yourself the flexibility you need.
And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. When you look at your own retirement plan, what do you see? Is it a paper map drawn up years ago that you're just hoping is still accurate? Or is it a live, constantly updating GPS that's ready to handle the real world? Because the answer to that question could make all the difference.